Welcome to Code the Future, where we sit down with the innovators, big thinkers, and leaders who are driving our software-defined future. Today, we're chatting with Mitch Joel, a renowned entrepreneur known for his expertise in digital marketing and business innovation. Mitch's career spans the gamut. He was a music journalist. He was a record label founder. He's been an executive at various media and tech companies that he's built and sold. He's a best-selling author. He's also the host of his very own successful podcast called 6 Pixels of Separation. And last I checked, I think you're nearing 1,000 episodes. We've got some work to do to catch up. But perhaps what he's best known for these days is his ability to help leaders and C-suite executives to decode the future, which is quite fitting given the name of our podcast. So Mitch, welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be here. I'm always intimidated when I have to do tech podcasts because I feel...
We won't go too deep.
Yeah, I'm like, we're not going to talk about switches and transformers, are we? Because then I'm going to have to pretend like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, it's great to have you on, and I kind of breezed over your biography, your history, or whatever. So if you want to fill in any gaps or whatever, you're more than welcome to. But really, what I'm interested in learning about is when did you realize you had a knack for helping leaders to decode the future?
It's such a great question. And normally I would divert to the early 2000s when myself, along with my 3 business partners, we built one of the premier and early digital marketing agencies. But as you were asking that question, I started realizing that it probably goes back to when I first started seeing technology. That in the mid 80s, I was privileged enough to get an Atari 800 computer. And I don't know why, but I was really interested in at that point, very remedial desktop publishing. And I was quick to create newsletters for groups and organizations and people and local day camps and things like that. So I'm guessing now that when you ask that, it probably dates back to there. I think it was probably during the agency where it's such an interesting perch to work in both a service-based business that's tech-driven and at the same time working with individuals in brands and organizations across myriad of industries.
Sure.
And it's one of those, what's the line? It's like enough to be dangerous.
Right.
And I felt from that point, one is like, what a fortuitous time to just be alive in the moment of seeing the internet be commercialized and watching all that happen. And then you just believe, and I don't know as I get older what it was, but just this belief that I'd walk into traditional media businesses and tell them that the internet's going to surpass television. And I was laughed.
Yeah, of course.
And I wasn't alone. It's not like but there was a lot of that where you reflect on and go like, what was it? Like, what was it in you that believed it at that level of depth? And, sometimes you get lucky. It's kind of,
Gosh, it is. Yeah, you just found yourself in.
Yeah, look, a lot of it.
Fell into it.
You don't want to hear that, but a lot of it is luck and timing and privilege and geography and location. And
yeah, sure.
So there's a lot of that. And again, just having just the curiosity, like that interest in this stuff. I didn't want to know how it worked or how it was built.
Yeah.
I was always really curious about what it could do.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, you mentioned the media or whatever, and obviously there's been a, profound evolution in terms of that. So I'm kind of curious, as someone who speaks to people all over the world on technology, on the future, what does your news diet look like? Where do you go for your ideas, insights? And, how has that changed over the years, and how do you see it changing in the years to come?
I mean, it's... When you are creating the media, it's hard not to pay attention to it. So if I go back to pre-internet where I was actually publishing music and entertainment magazines, I'd always be shocked at my friends and peers who didn't know the journalist who wrote the cover story for such and such magazine or be interested in wanting to meet the local DJ on the morning show. Like I was very informed from that side. So it's kind of an unfair question when my joking line is years later I called myself an infovore. I'm just like, that is just
take it all in.
Yeah,
as
and
much as you can.
Even during this calamitous political cycle of world that we're in, both globally, both in the U.S. and even here in Canada, I can tell you that my diet can go very extreme left and very extreme right. Not because I'm somewhat captured by the ideology, but I'm fascinated by the communication chain. I'm super interested in this happened, which seems like somewhat of a bipartisan issue, and to see the sort of capturedness of either side and their perspective of it, it feels somewhat experimental to me and interesting. So that's like a philosophical thought. mechanically, what am I doing? One is I'm a huge fan of newsletters.
Mm-hmm.
Love newsletters.
Substacks.
Which leads into the Substacks and things like that. Absolutely. I love supporting these types of
Independent. Yeah.
Yeah, and or just even more just different. Like I'm happy to pay even if I don't believe in them ideologically.
Right.
So that would be one thing. I would be lying if I didn't say that I love YouTube in terms of this, but the video part of it.
Sure. Yeah.
I say that in that way because, again, with almost 1,000 episodes and 20 years of doing a weekly show, I don't release any video. So it's like one of those cobbler's kids where it's like, I can't get my own shoes fixed, but I'll tell everybody else how to fix it. So I love watching things like this on YouTube. That's probably my main day, where I probably even leave it on during the day on like my iPad, just on the side or something. Yeah, totally on that. I'm still a big fan of news alerts. I mean, I use Google News Alerts for some keywords or key phrases that I'm looking for.
So what are some of those key phrases, key
they'll
stay on the cutting edge?
Yeah, they'll shift. So it can't, like artificial intelligence now is too broad.
I was going to say you'd get news alerts every 2 seconds.
So you kind of play in certain spaces and things like that. What I typically do to avoid that filter is I have a news alert for the person who I think is thinking most interestingly about it.
Yeah.
So you're not just seeing when they post, you're seeing what other people are saying about them a little bit.
Yeah.
But again, that all resides, I think, it's primarily within an email delivery system. So it's mostly that. And look, I will say that in the past year or so, things in the media have gotten so contentious and hot that I am realizing that even though I don't think I've been ideologically captured, I think it did break my brain. In the truest sense of it, I think that it's anxiety inducing. I mean, there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
I felt that I had to take a step back. And so the main one that I'll share last is just I read books.
Right. So that old form of.
Yeah. I mean, I can do it on my tablet, on
Yeah.
Kindle app. Okay. So I do like digital. Some I do like physical too, because I'm a comic book guy as well. But spending that amount of time with someone who put that amount of time into something.
Yeah. It's a very different form of communication and receiving it, right?
Yeah, and I don't know how you feel. I don't know how big of a reader you are, but it feels like a superpower. It feels like nobody reads books anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that feels like some type of weird secret that I have, that I read books. And you don't do that.
Makes it seem smart, right?
No. It makes me feel like no one else is doing it, and that means it might be something unique.
Yeah,
is more of it.
Yeah,
I don't look down on people who, was it Nate Bargatze, the comedian, who's got like all the words are in a book. It's a lot. Oh, it's like there's no pictures, there's no directed by. It just when you think there's 5 more words, there's more. So it's like I don't blame people who don't like that as a media channel.
Yeah. So that idea of you sort of feel like you're drinking from the fire hose, just this sheer amount of information that we are expected to take in, or surrounds us within this attention economy.
I'm being lied to on either side, or being manipulated on either side.
Yeah.
Too.
So I mean, I think about our own business, QNX, being involved in the auto industry, and the fact that we're at this time of profound change, an inflection point where we'll probably see more change in the next 10 years than we've seen in the previous 100. What would be your recommendation to that industry in particular, in terms of how do you separate the signal from the noise? Is it reading more books, or is it going for a diverse amount of sources and perspectives, or I guess, how do you stay on the cutting edge to make sure that you're not just taking in garbage?
I would ultimately believe that the people involved in the industry are the ones in which become sources for the information of consumption. And so I might think about it a little differently. I think perhaps it'd be more about how do we take what we're doing and turn these into what I had mentioned on stage here today. This idea of it being services as experience, I think it'd be a big thing there. I look at my EV life and how FSD, full self-driving, is an option. It's $100 a month or whatever it is. How connectivity is another $13, $14 a month. That connectivity gives me in-car internet, but along with that, all these apps and tools and functionalities, and that there's no doubt what that road looks like as we both, move from beyond being in control of it to being a real passenger of it. Does this become a fourth space? What does that look like? How do we culturally shift public perception to this idea of it's if you could work in it, you could have a picnic in it, whatever it should be.
All-in-one entertainment living room on the road.
And then I think there's also something about the connectivity of these devices, and I don't know if this is edge computing or what we're talking about, but the ability to get me from here to my other office And it's not just like, this is how long it'll take and this is traffic. It's, oh, we're going to get in the car at 10:03 because that's optimized for how we're all connected.
Right.
Almost daisy chain technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are more of the areas that if I were in that space, I'd be thinking about, because they, from what I've seen in my conversations, is more technical, more, what's the hardware, what's the software, what are the algorithms?
Yeah. Yeah.
If we think more about the humans, right? What's the humans in the loop model?
Yep.
What might this be? And then that leads to some really interesting content. So sociology, psychology, human behavior.
Right.
We're seeing a lot of this now. A lot of content on community. Right. We're starting to realize that in a world where the hard work becomes very easy, so it'll be how we commune and how we connect in our agency and things like that. Those would be the more interesting topics, I believe, and places to start. Look, where have I grown the most? I've probably grown the most when I pick up a magazine or a book from a writer or a topic I have actually no interest in, because I can probably learn something. My favorite example personally is I love the arts. I mean, I love music. I love entertainment. I don't like dance. I don't know why. Not that I can't dance. I can't.
So you find yourself picking up dance magazines?
Just reading like Twilight Tharp's book would have been a great example of that. Or trying to understand, like, what is it about this that makes humans move? Books about the topics. Brian Eno has a great book about what music is for. So even if you like music a little bit, like, it's like, what is music for?
Yeah.
Why is it the only form of art that the audience physically moves to? You don't dance in a museum, do you?
No.
Right?
If you do, there's probably something wrong with you, right?
So that's the that's the again, I use the example of continuous learning.
Yeah, that's the most important skill.
Yeah, and I think people think that means that, like, I have to upskill my sales skills if I'm in sales. I'm like, I don't think that's what it means.
Yeah,
I think it's like really exploring and be open to, like, what are the 2 or 3 things I might be able to apply to my work or how I think.
So not necessarily related directly to your line of work or whatever, but just that active working that muscle, that learning muscle.
Yeah, so I do a lot of community work. I'm very active in communities locally, nationally, internationally. I try and mix it up. And they'll typically call me and say, hey, do you want to sit on the marketing committee, or do you want to sit on the innovation committee? And I'm like, no, I want to sit on, like, a strategy committee. I want to do the work I don't do day in and day out. I want to flex other muscles.
Gotcha.
In that would be, and I'm going to assume a lot of these hyper-intellectual people who are working on these wicked problems are totally doing that. But if not, that's where I would play.
Kind of going against the grain, if you will, right? It's a bit of a contrarian. You'd think that most people gravitate to their strongest suit on a board or whatever, as opposed to, I'm actually pretty weak in this area, but this is an opportunity for me to better my understanding of that particular discipline.
And it brings in, like a real core belief I have, and maybe it comes from my initial training as being a journalist.
Yeah.
But I always want to straw man or steel man the argument. One is we all have cognitive bias. We all think we know things and whatever.
Yeah.
And again, bringing in these generative AI tools, I think that's one of the best things I do, where it's like, this is my thought. This is going to be my LinkedIn post.
Yeah.
And I put it in and I go, thinking like me, which you can do with 20 plus years of great content, give me a completely contrarian perspective.
Love that. Yeah.
I mean, that has unlocked.
Yeah.
I talk in my presentation about this ability that we can talk to our documents. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, it is. And by the way, like, where do we think we've evolved best as a society? One of the pillars might be the Socratic way in which philosophy came to be.
Questioning
in public, out loud to one another. Like, we are actually entering into this. I know podcasting kind of had this before. We could talk about, people like the Weinstein brothers or Rogan or whoever. It's very Socratic.
It is. Yeah.
In fact, there's a guy, I think his name's Alex O'Connor, was a religious podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm not religious, but he loves this idea of that, like, it's actual philosophy, these conversations. Now, the fact that you can have it privately with a chatbot is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, and it is readily available to everybody. So, like, how do we sit in a world where the barrier to be infinitely smarter has really been removed? I'm not talking about search. Search was an interesting way to formulate information that pre-existed by someone created with some level of cognitive bias. But now we're in a world where it can learn to think like you and then give you opposing arguments and help you actually grow and learn.
Yeah.
is me calling this the shift from the attention economy to the intimacy economy a viable sentiment?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't compliment me, but
No, I mean, I guess when you think about, the next generation, you're saying how important it is to continually learn, stretch yourself in other areas that beyond your, your area of discipline, your focus or whatever. When you think about that next generation, above and beyond that continual learning or whatever, what other secrets of success or skill sets do you think are really vital to make sure that you're able to thrive in this new era world,
I used to really play what is known as the long game. My friend Dory Clark just wrote a book on that called The Long Game. And I read the book, of course, but it wasn't necessarily illuminating to me only because I feel like I've always played that game.
Yeah.
What I didn't layer onto that was what is this idea of second order thinking.
Right.
That
Not the immediate gratification of the
what if you can plan it actually longer? What if you can think about it in that way? Well, we're in quarterly reports and short-termism and a real rush as everything from a poly-crisis to emerging AI to the climate to it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
But, whether you have kids or not, that perspective of what might this look like in 5 years? I mean, look, we have shortening lifespans of CEOs. Here in Canada, I think there was a report the other month that 80+% of professionals are looking for another career, let alone job.
Well, yeah.
So, maybe we've lost a little bit of this idea that, we're not going to be here for a long time in the timeline of the universe, but our lives, as long as we're healthy.
Yeah.
How do we do that? Yeah.
Yeah. No, that short-termism, I think, is definitely something that needs to be worked on. And, going back to reading books or whatever, that's sort of going against the grain, right? So,
yeah. And it's also like this, the visualization is like, just like you stretch time, stretch time a little bit.
Yeah.
Not because I want to say young or anything like that, but I believe spending time in that deep work, Newport, there's a real value.
Vital.
Yeah, because you're stretching time at the same time is going you're in your flow state, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, you obviously think a ton about the future and how best to position individuals, companies thrive, in the future, whatever. What excites you the most about it? What gives you the most optimism, and what, strikes the most fear into you? What has you worried, I guess?
Well, the optimism is the idea that human beings have been infinitely resilient as far as we know.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is as I learn more, you start realizing things like history is written by the winners. So it feels like a story of resiliency, but what about those that were crushed beneath those feet? Where are those? We don't hear those. Most of those people didn't exist or stay alive. So that's like one area I'm trying to say that's optimistic, but in a certain way, it
Gives you hope.
It gives you this idea that we can and have been somewhat resilient. My fear is that we are racing towards something that in any situation benefits very few and changes dynamics too rapidly.
So the benefits go to the top 1% kind of idea,
and even those benefits ultimately lead to their failure. There's this thinker, Daniel Schmachtenberger, and he talks about this theory of Moloch. Moloch is it's a monster. It's just a word. It's when we are both racing towards something that has no inherent value or benefit to anyone. The simplistic fun version he talks about is Instagram filters.
Okay. Yeah.
It doesn't benefit the person using it. It doesn't benefit the audience.
Yeah.
But we race towards it.
Yeah.
The education system would be a grander version of that. AI is definitely there as well. This idea that, we have to really be sure what we are going to unleash, because if we are going to redefine intelligence as a definition, I'm not 100% comfortable with the idea that we would be good with becoming second or third on a food chain.
But
that's my fear.
Your advice still, though, to people is to learn how to use these tools, embrace it, because if you don't, you're going to get left behind.
We have to understand them, know them, and be very critical of them, I think is the problem. So I think people will do the first two, but not the last one. Can I be critical of it? Is it telling me anything that I couldn't have done on my own that I didn't know, that I didn't think of? I don't like those as results typically, because I'm somewhat upset in myself that I didn't do the work then. And so I won't necessarily even use those outputs.
Yeah, which is probably part of the reason why you sort of you ask it one thing and then you say, give me a completely different
Yeah.
contrarian viewpoint.
And even like as a little sprinkle to that,
Yeah.
think of someone you really respect who might be somewhat contrarian to you and tell it to give you that person's perspective. It'll do that too.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, I mean, if you've been around for a long time, you've been in this industry, thinking about the future for a long time. If you go back to that younger Mitch, 25, 20 or whatever, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself?
I would probably have told that person, people are going to buy books on the internet, start that business.
E-commerce is the way of the future. To get on it.
I sat there in the very early days before Google, working in a search engine, doing this stuff and saying things like, someone's going to put a casino on the internet.
Yeah.
And it didn't do it. I just watched it. So that would probably be the commentaries. All those things that you watched and you knew and you saw coming, maybe you should have jumped on one of the waves. I did from an investment perspective, but not from a doing it.
Yeah. Well, if only you had that time machine, right? You would be
Yeah.
in a different spot. But no, I really appreciate your insights, Mitch. It's great to talk to you. Excited to see, where the future takes us next. And maybe we'll sit down again sometime.
I appreciate it, Matt. Great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.